If you've watched my Onimusha Warlords video, you'll know how big of a fan of that game I am. A lot of people might not understand its quirky charm and randomness, but to me, that's something that helps make the game stand out. It's an entertaining experience with a lot of funny lines, fluid combat, and an overall creepy atmosphere. It's a game that's essentially a weird amalgamation of elements that fit perfectly to create one of the most memorable pieces of media that I've ever exposed myself to. To put it simply, Onimusha Warlords is a great game and one that I'd easily place as another one of my personal favorites. Since I put out that video, I had been dying to get to the other games in the series, but unfortunately, it's one of those situations where it's difficult for me to easily play PlayStation 2 games outside of emulation. It's not that I don't like doing it, it's that I've had bad luck on certain games, which I find to be incredibly demoralizing on even bothering with in the first place. Luckily, however, since I made my Onimusha Warlords video, Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny would eventually get a remaster, and damn, it's good. Now I have to admit, I don't think that I've played Onimusha 2 in over 20 years, so a lot of the game I didn't even remember all that much. I remember the return of the castle from the first game and Jubei, of course, but everything else was just like experiencing pure brain fog. I barely remember any of this game compared to Onimusha 1 and 3, where I think those were more ingrained into my memory. But that doesn't mean that Onimusha 2 was a bad game. In fact, I think that going back and playing it was a highlight for me because I thought it was really fun. And despite some of the censorship woes and what have you, I still think that it's a solid enough game and one definitely worth checking out on a sale. But anyways, let's just get into Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny. Developed by none other than Capcom, the original release of Onimusha 2 would come on the PlayStation 2 way back in the year 2002, with the remaster releasing 23 years later on May 23rd, 2025. The story of the game takes place 10 years after Onimusha Warlords, with a new protagonist named Jubei Yagyu, a swordsman whose village had been destroyed by Nobunaga's army. After Jubei's Oni powers unleashed by an Oni named Takajo, he's told to find 5 orbs in order to stop Nobunaga. As you progress through the game, you meet lots of different characters, each with their own branching narratives that can be unlocked if you give them gifts so that you can befriend them.
So it's true. The Earth really is round.
With that in mind, there's a lot of replay value to Onimusha 2, along with multiple difficulties if you're someone who wants to go for achievements and what have you. I played through the game normally, and I believe it may have taken 8 or 9 hours in its entirety doing 2 of the Phantom Realms, which is essentially the same thing as the Dark Realm from Onimusha Warlords. What I really loved about this game and the time that I spent playing was that it felt just as unhinged as the first game. I mean, there's some strange stuff that hits you right in the face almost immediately, like this opening movie. It feels unnecessary, but I absolutely adore it. To me, a lot of this game feels like they realized how wacky Onimusha Warlords was and just embraced it. I mean, look at this chick Juju Dama.
Look at me. Do you like what you see?
Or this dude Goga Dantas.
Thank you for staying.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. My name is Gogan Dantis, the greatest swordsman of all demons.
What's wrong with you? Who talks like that?
Both of them are insane, and it's glorious. I honestly like these two as much as the big red demon dude and Guildenstern from the first game, just because every scene they appeared in felt ridiculous. Every so often, one of the characters that you befriend might help you out in a battle, or you might even need to control them for a story event. But everything in the game really leads up to Jubei having to do battle with Nobunaga. While I think that Onimusha 2 is still a phenomenal game, I think there's some things that it improves on on from the first game and some things that it does worse. If I'm picking out positives, I still think that the game's action combat is really fun. I love the new weapons, especially the hammer, which has this beast magic attack that causes damage to multiple enemies. Probably most disappointed by the spear, which I don't know if I was using it wrong or something, but it felt kind of trash aside from its magic attack, which froze enemies and was mostly an instant kill. Other than that, you get your usual range stuff, a lightning katana, a double-bladed wind sword, and a big old flame sword that you get from the Phantom Realm. In the same vein as the first Onimusha, magic feels pretty beastly and is still the best way to wipe out enemies and bosses. And in addition to the magic, you also get the ability to transform into an Oni after obtaining 5 purple orbs. When you transform into an Oni, you don't take any damage and you can shoot magic. I honestly save this for boss fights to make them go by quicker, though I don't think you necessarily need to. You also have the option to spend souls to upgrade your gear again. Every level makes your stuff more powerful and changes the style of the equipment visually. I was able to upgrade mostly everything by the end of the game aside for a few armor pieces that I finished off by going into the Phantom Realm. I don't know if you necessarily need to bother with upgrading everything, but I figured to just do it anyways. I mean, it's not difficult, just a bit time consuming. In the same fashion as the first game, we still have a survival horror design with the same old pre-rendered background glory. I think the main difference is that Onimusha 2 tends to keep pushing you forward, whereas Onimusha Warlords was almost like a Metroidvania in a way. I think that I prefer the design of Onimusha Warlords more in this case. Probably the most unique and interesting thing that stood out to me with Onimusha 2 was Amasho Town. This place sort of serves as a hub initially. You can find a shopkeeper here where you could buy gifts and stuff to give to your pals, and also a bunch of NPCs roaming around who might give you an item. I actually really like the idea of having a little place to chill and be free from enemy encounters and what have you, but unfortunately, you do eventually get locked from returning here, which kinda sucks. The other difference, and I think this might be one that could bug people a lot more, is the game doesn't really have the same creepy vibe as the first Onimusha. I mean, you get some areas that look pretty dark, but it doesn't have that same atmosphere feel as the first game did. It's almost like they embraced the campy tone of the first game, but then decided to go with more action. And I mean, honestly, like I said, the Metroidvania stuff isn't even really there. You do have some light backtracking, and periodically there are these annoying chess puzzles that you could do, but the game really feels like it constantly pushes you forward, which locks you out from going back to previous sections if you trigger certain things. It's not a bad thing, and I think that some people might prefer this style, but I'm indifferent. I think it would have been better to at least have the option to return to old areas, if anything. I'm also not really sold on the enemy types either. A lot of them are recycled, but then you have a bunch of new ones like these alligator dudes and these robots. I found the worst and easily most annoying of the new enemies to be these bugs that fly at you. These things are nothing but an irritant, though I did find out while doing one of the Phantom Realms that you could squish them with the hammer, so that's pretty sweet. I think another thing that makes the game feel less horror-ish is the music. Don't get me wrong, I thought a lot of the music in Onimusha 2 was great, but it doesn't have that same desolate and creepy tone as Warlords. The whole time I spent playing, I honestly felt like it was a soundtrack that was made for an action game more than anything else. Not bad, but not the same. I think that's the gist of really everything in Onimusha 2 for me. It feels fine, like it's still a good game, but there was something more special about Onimusha Warlords. It was like the first game was just an absolute gem, and I never got tired of replaying it. Whereas with this game, I don't even know if I want to go through it a second time. I think that stuff like being able to gift items and what have you is a neat idea since, like I said, it adds replay value. But at the same time, I feel like I just can't be bothered. It's like I don't care enough about any of these people except for maybe Oyu, which is the girl. I think the moments that Jubei has with her felt more interesting than any of the cutscenes that I got with other people. There was just something that stood out with the interactions between Jubei and her a lot more. But yeah, in closing, I'd say that overall, Onimusha 2 is still a really good game. I just don't think it's as good as Onimusha Warlords. Personally, I feel some people might appreciate the way the game constantly moves you forward and doesn't have that extreme Metroidvania style backtracking like the first game. But if you're like me, you might get a little bit disappointed after a while when you start to second guess your progression and hope you didn't miss out on some sweet item because you can't go back to some of the areas after certain points. It's not a huge deal, but I wish we could have at least had the option, you know? I also think it would have been cool if you could have bought more stuff from the shop as well. I mean, you get gold for a while, but once the town gets locked because you progress too far, the gold stops coming. It was a nice little distraction, and I don't know, I thought having access to the town was a neat little thing. Is it like some groundbreaking feature? Nah, but I like the immersion aspect. But even though there was some things that I was a little disappointed by, I have to at least admit, I like going through the story and seeing what kind of wacky stuff Jubei might encounter. The main demon bosses I thought were pretty funny, and the fights themselves weren't too bad either. Some of them actually being kind of tough too. I'm actually glad that I got to be able to play this game after so many years, but at the same time, I wish that I would have been able to look at it as highly as I regard Onimusha Warlords. It's not a bad game or anything like that, it's just not as good as the first game. Either way, I really hope Capcom decides to remaster the third and fourth Onimusha games before Way of the Sword comes out. If not, well, at least we got the first two games. Thank you all for watching. What did you think about Onimusha 2? Did you play it, or were you on the fence of even buying it in the first place? Let me know in the comments below and I'll check them out. Also, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. We'll be back with more soon enough, so stay tuned. Until next time, peace out.